Well, welcome into another edition of Occupy Democrats on Trump's Tyrannical Tuesday. You can have some tacos, but today we're talking tyranny in this breaking story, straight out of Rachel Maddow's mouth. Amazing stuff. You cannot miss this because we are on the brink. And I'm going to show you that to you in a few seconds. But let me show you something first. Several months ago, people talked about this. Trump talked about this. He's done the tyrannical stuff out loud, and people are not listening. Take a look when I show you this breaking story from Rachel about what he's really actually doing and what it really means to all of us, potentially. But take a look at what he said and what was set up about this months ago, and people still elected him. Take a quick listen.
Democratic nominee for president, Vice President Kamala Harris, recently had an interview on Fox News where she accused Donald Trump of threatening to use the military against Americans who oppose him. Brandon Lewis from our Verified team looks into whether Donald Trump actually said that.
Vice President Kamala Harris was interviewed on Fox News and claimed former President Donald Trump threatened to use the military against Americans he calls the enemy within.
You and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people.
Multiple viewers, including Janny and John, messaged us asking if Trump really said that. So let's verify. Our sources are past statements by Trump and his campaign spokesman. We checked multiple interviews that Trump gave to Fox News Channel and found he actually said this multiple times, including twice last week. Here's what Trump said on October 13th in response to a question about whether he expects chaos on Election Day.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Trump then reiterated his comments during a taped town hall with Fox News' Harris Faulkner on October 16th.
They're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous.
So, yes, Trump has talked about using the military against Americans he called the enemy from within.
Now, a lot of Trump's acolytes and sycophants and the people elected around him, which sometimes are one and the same, like to say, oh, it was just a joke, he's just playing around, he's just being boastful. Except he isn't. And the reason why he isn't is exactly what this breaking story is. Because he's very quietly, this is what I've been saying for months and months now, he makes all this noise over here so he can do some really crafty, sneaky crap over here. And that's exactly what this breaking story is. It's unbelievable, and this has got to be stopped. Listen to what Rachel Maddow is about to share with you that he's really doing. Check the story out.
So here's kind of a sleeper issue that hasn't gotten much attention. But one of the things I want to do as we close in on the start of the second 100 days of Trump's term in office is I want to put a little bit of focus on things that haven't yet emerged as major issues, but heads up, they're coming. So here's one. Donald Trump, quietly, has now declared that on a 170-mile strip of land across 3 different states, active duty U.S. soldiers now have the authority to arrest and search people. Active duty U.S. troops doing that on U.S. soil. You might not have heard anything about it, but this month, President Trump signed what he called a National Security Presidential Memorandum, which declared that extended swaths of 3 contiguous states are all now technically a military base. It's 170 miles long, a long strip of federal land along the southern borders of California, Arizona, and New Mexico. And in this memo, Trump ordered the Pentagon, the Defense Department, to start taking control of this land. So now the U.S. military has taken control of 170 miles of land, starting in New Mexico, along New Mexico's southern border. And they've declared that that land is now part of Fort Huachuca, which is a U.S. Army base that's not even in New Mexico. It's in Arizona. Why would you take 170 miles of land in 3 different states and say all that land is now part of an Army base somewhere very far away? Well, the reason Trump is doing that is because he wants active duty U.S. military service members to start arresting people on U.S. soil. Last week, the military announced that U.S. soldiers are now authorized to arrest anyone who steps foot on that 170-mile-long strip of land. U.S. soldiers, active duty soldiers, are now newly authorized to search those people. They are authorized to implement crowd control. U.S. active duty troops searching and arresting people on U.S. soil and performing crowd control operations, again, on U.S. soil. And this land, yes, it is along the Mexican border, and migrants crossing the border are the stated targets of this new operation. So we may not think of this as something that matters for broader U.S. politics, or indeed the health of our political system. But if you're looking for big red flags in terms of authoritarian takeover in a democratic rule of law country, when you've got U.S. troops searching and arresting people and doing crowd control on U.S. soil, you're kind of there. Under American law, the Posse Comitatus Act is supposed to prevent the U.S. government from using U.S. soldiers on U.S. soil. Liza Goitein and Joseph Nunn at the Brennan Center for Justice tonight are calling this a slippery slope, saying, quote, if soldiers are allowed to take on domestic policing roles at the border, it may become easier to justify uses of the military in the U.S. interior in the future. Our nation's founders warned against the dangers of an army turned inward, which can all too easily be turned into an instrument of tyranny. Theoretically, if somebody wanders onto a military base, they can be arrested as trespassers on military property. So the idea, I think here, the neat trick that Trump has pulled here is that he's just turned hundreds of miles of American soil into what is technically a military base. And so, hey, presto, that's one neat trick to give the U.S. military the power to search and arrest people on U.S. soil. And right now, they are only doing it at the edges, literally the physical edges of our country. But that is how you start.
Yeah, she's 1,000% right. That is how it starts. It starts very quietly. It's a slow burn. It isn't something you see right away. Because you can crack a door, it doesn't mean you have to swing it wide open. But once you've actually turned the knob and cracked it, you've removed every ounce of obstruction to what that door is. Swinging it wide open can be done exceptionally quietly in the middle of the night as a metaphor. And the bottom line is, this isn't a slippery slope. This is a freaking colossal water slide when it comes to actual human rights, democracy, and due process. All of these conversations that we are consistently having in the first 100 days of Trump's tyranny on a Tuesday. So folks, please share this with your friends. Talk with them. Talk with people you don't agree with. Make sure they understand what this kind of stuff actually means. That's our duty at this point as we the people. We have to protest and we have to educate, and we cannot stop. Stay frosty.